Okay, so I figured it would only be fair here to show the final product of my Kyosho Inferno 10E electric conversion. Basically, all I did since the last video was to put an under tray on the chassis and to paint the body and to mount a different wing. The first wing I had put on it was a 6.5-inch wing from the Kyosho RB6 series, and this would have been fine, but when you pair this wing up with the Inferno 10 body, so this is a repro body for the Inferno 10. I think Team Blue Groove made this one. This body is kind of wide. It's actually quite a bit wider than the chassis, right? Now, if you mount a relatively, 6.5 inches isn't exactly narrow, but when you mount a 6.5-inch wing on this body, it does look a bit narrow because the body's kind of chunky. It's kind of wide. So I went instead with a 7-inch wing. This is a J-Concept 7-inch wing. And I think the size of the wing and the size of the body, they kind of match better, at least aesthetically. So that's what I decided to go with. For the under tray, Kyosho never made an under tray for this chassis because the chassis is an aluminum chassis. But I want to try to protect the aluminum, so I had to kind of find something that maybe sort of kind of works. This particular under tray is a Team Blue Groove under tray for the YZ10 870C, the Yokomo YZ10. And that particular under tray didn't actually fit very well on the 870C, so I just kind of cut it and bent it and hacked it a bit to make it fit this chassis, and it actually fits pretty well. It fits in the back just fine, and toward the front there's a little bit of a gap here on the front two corners, but really not too big of a deal. So I just really needed something, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just had to kind of work, and that seems to work okay. So really that's it. I did take this for a couple of test drives out in the driveway. It does seem to drive quite nicely. A few things to note are that after the many months it took me to get through this build, I am starting to see the diff oil leak out through the front and rear diffs. This is with the seals, like the seal gaskets and the O-rings and everything that I put in there to try to seal the diff oil into the diff casing. You can even see here on the front side of the chassis, a little bit of diff oil is leaking out through the opening in the chassis here and out onto the chassis between the under tray and the chassis. It seems like a pretty slow leak, so it's it's not something that's going to happen over the course of days. This was over many months, so there's still enough fluid in here for the diffs to have some sort of viscosity to them. But if I am going to race this at the Vintage Nationals before I go, maybe a week before I go, I might tear the gearboxes apart again, tear the diffs apart, put new seals on, and put fresh oil in, so that it's at least ready for that race. The other thing to consider in the test runs that I've done on, again, this is just on the driveway outside of my house, is that at full steering lock, you do get some clicking at the universal joints at the front of the chassis. So the amount of steering lock you can get out of this is pretty sharp. It's actually quite a lot. So when the car steers, say, full to the right, I haven't quite figured out if it's the inside or the outside wheel where the universal joint is clicking, but you will notice that. And these are using, by the way, the Jazz Rider universals for the Kyosho Optima. Okay, they're more or less a perfect fit to this chassis. So I did actually break one universal, this one here, in my first 2 test runs, which was only maybe a minute or so long each time. So one of these little pins here from this Jazz Rider universal kind of popped out, and then the universal the joint fell apart. So I did get a couple of spares for this. I do not know exactly how these universal joints will hold up under stress, under the stress of racing. because, you know, if you're going full steering lock, maybe the universal joint is extending, is bending further than it really wants to, and then you try to apply torque through that, and may cause that joint to break. So maybe something like an MIP CVD, which I do have a set of for the Inferno 10, but I kind of want to save these for a different build. Those will probably do better under high articulation angles than a more classical universal joint like this. So we'll have to see that holds up, how that holds up. So, you know, I'm not entirely sure yet if I'm going to race this at the Vintage Off-Road Nationals. I would certainly like to bring it, you know, just to play around with and see if I want to run it. My kind of default runner for the classic four-wheel drive class is my Yokomo 93 Works. It's a great car, and I have some setup changes I made to that I think will make it a little better. So I'm kind of debating between that one and this fresh build. So we'll just have to see. I haven't really made a decision yet. But this is the final result. And, you know, I do like the way the body looks on this. Initially, I was going to go with something like a Kyosho Laser ZXR body and sort of cut it to fit. I decided against that. I also tried using a Kyosho Optima, an Optima Mid long wheelbase body. This one is from Penguin Racing. I even like painted it and everything. I spent a lot of time masking it, painting it, cutting it to try to fit, and it turns out that it actually doesn't fit very well. So don't use an Optima Mid body. There's not enough. I can't quite remember why it doesn't fit, but it doesn't fit very well. So just go with the standard Inferno 10, you know, repro body. It works fine. It does look a little bit chunky, but in a way that gives it kind of a unique look. Yeah, so that's it for now. Thanks for watching.